Hello, this is a brief history and summary of environmental politics in the United States. My name is Trevor Hammonds. I decided to talk about environmental politics for my term project because it ties back to our course, and despite being a political science major, I don't know everything about the subject, and I also think it'd be great to inform my fellow classmates since I know most people typically don't pay attention to politics. So, to start off, pretty basic stuff. What is environmental politics? A lot of people have a one dimensional view of what politics is about, but it actually encompasses a lot of stuff, especially regarding the environment. So, environmental politics encompasses a range of subjects such as political theory and thought related to the environment, stances of mainstream political parties and contemporary environmental movements, and it also encompasses public policy and implementation that affects the environment. All right, now how long has it been around? Well, to tell you the truth, environmental politics in the United States has always been around. Most certainly not as prevalent as ideology and influence that it has today, but certainly it's always been around in our politics. Um, Ideas like conservationism have been in our politics for many years. The vast contemporary environmental movement has its roots in the social change that took place in the United States during the 1960s, when growing concern for air and water pollution had its scope broadened to include most all landscapes for human activity. So, right after World War II, we started becoming a lot more concerned about clean air and clean water for everyone. And that scope had broadened to include a lot more things. However, environmental health concerns can date all the way back to the progressive era in the United States during the 1890s, all the way to the 1920s. Urban reforms such as cleaner water supplies and a more efficient way of removing sewage, also an overall reduction in unsanitary and crowded living during that time had laid the foundation for the vast social change in the 60s, and then also the movement that we see today with a lot of progressive ideas towards the environment. All right, so what's it like now? Environmental politics has become much more influential in American politics after the implementation of numerous policies, such as the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the formation of the EPA in the 1970s. Other important and influential policy include the Endangered Species Act, Toxic Substances Control Act, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, and the FIFRA. Most of today's activism is directed towards protecting and conserving our environment, as well as reducing and even eliminating pollution. Skeptics actually feel that the movement is more rooted in politics than it actually is in science. Skeptics debate the existence of climate change, and they feel new environmental policy would hurt society more than it would help. So, who's on what side? This is a question that a lot of people have. What are people's views? What does this person think about this? So right now I'm going to tell you basic, pretty general definitions of party views on the environment and policy that concerns it. This does not, this is not to generalize everyone in those categories. This is just a basic outline of what people in that party will probably feel like about towards the environment. These definitions that I'm reading, these summaries, if you will, are coming from some websites that are for that party. So I tried to stay as non-biased as I could with this. So Democrats are dedicated to protecting the environment and reducing the effects of climate change to secure the quality of air, water, and land for future generations. Republicans believe that conservation is a conservative value, as long as it's properly balanced with economics. They consider human health and safety to be the first and most important concern regarding environmental policy. Libertarians believe that competitive free markets and property rights stimulate technological innovation and behavioral changes required to protect our environment and ecosystems. And the Green Party says that they want a sustainable future for the environment grounded in fiscal responsibility, ecological health, and social justice. All these sources, of course, will be at the end of my slide, and we can look at those as well, so you can pause the video and go check them out yourself, because I do highly encourage it. All right, continued. I did decide to include these 5 from 2016 because it's the politicians that most people can recognize by name because that election was so popular and controversial. Instead of reading generalized summaries for these people, I decided it would be better to give you guys direct quotes of what these people think. I'm also going to be sourcing these at the end of the slide. I do, again, encourage you guys to look at them because there's a wealth of information out there, and politics has a lot more influence on your life than you might think. So we'll start with Donald Trump, who identifies as a Republican. The quote that I'm going to be reading says, "It used to not be climate change. It used to be global warming. That wasn't working too well because it was getting too cold all over the place." A lot of people recognize Donald Trump for the China thing. That comes from a tweet, I believe, where he said that, and this is generalized, that he said global warming is basically a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese so that American businesses can run more inefficiently. So that's his quote, a little bit cynical. So we'll move on to Hillary Clinton, who's a Democrat. As president, this is obviously from 2 years ago. As president, I will work both domestically and internationally to ensure that we build on recent progress and continue to slash greenhouse gas pollution over the coming years, as science clearly tells us we must. Obviously, a more progressive view towards the environment, obviously wanting to shift to clean energy as fast as she can. And now we'll talk about Jill Stein, who is a Green Party. And what I loved about the 2016 election is that we actually saw a numerous amount of people vote third party, meaning they voted either for the Green, Jill Stein, or even Gary Johnson, who's a libertarian. We typically don't see that a lot. Jill Stein, she's a Green Party, and this is her quote. "Our top plank is really a Green New Deal to transform our economy to a green economy. 100% wind, water, and sun by the year 2030. We can do it. This is an emergency, and we must do it." So Jill Stein, obviously, she said a Green New Deal, referencing, the New Deal so many years ago that was progressive. She's talking about a Green New Deal, and she wants to do it by 2030. Which is honestly a great goal if you're going to have one. I mean, there'd have to be a lot of change really, really fast, but it's a goal nonetheless. Bernie Sanders, who is the other Democrat, he identified as a democratic socialist, which a lot of people found it was a very polarizing identification by him. A lot of people either enjoyed it or just did not like it. So Bernie Sanders quote, "At a time when our planet is warming due to climate change, the last thing our environment needs is more drilling. What we need is for Congress and the White House to move towards clean energy such as solar, wind, and geothermal." So Bernie Sanders aligning his goals with that of Hillary Clinton. Obviously not the exact same quote. Their views on the environment align pretty well. And then we'll move to Gary Johnson, who actually gained a lot of traction in the for a libertarian, that is. In the 2016 election, a lot of people voted for him, which again I found super exciting and interesting because it typically doesn't happen. So Gary Johnson's quote, "In billions of years, the sun is going to actually grow and encompass the earth, right? So global warming is in our future." Now this quote is a little, so for those of you that don't know, obviously didn't explain each party, which I guess I'll do briefly. So everyone knows Republicans. Um, their whole idea is just conservative, sticking with the stuff that works well. Democrats are more about change. They have more progressive views on a lot of issues. The Green Party, if you can tell just by the name, they're more focused on the environment and protecting that and conserving that as well as we can. And Libertarians are more concerned with just the government not being involved in anything. And so this quote from Gary Johnson talking about the sun going to grow and encompassing the earth, I don't know if that's true, if the sun is actually going to grow and envelop the earth. But I could be wrong. But that we can see the quote, little bit cynical, like Donald Trump, just a little bit cynical. You can go on and read the article. It is the USA Today source that I'm going to show you in just a second. Like I said, all of these sources have a wealth of information, and I encourage everyone to go look at them and read up on them because, like I said, politics has a huge investment and influence on your life, whether you think it does or not. The policies that we're going to create in the future will affect you and your children and how their lives are. So I highly suggest at least reading up on these candidates because they might pop up in the future. We know Donald Trump will if he runs for re-election. I can't remember if he said he is or not yet, but Bernie Sanders, he's still in Congress. Don't know if we'll ever hear back from Gary Johnson or Jill Stein or even Hillary Clinton for that matter. But like I said, I encourage you to read up on the information. So where's it going? Truth be told, there's really no telling where environmental politics will go in the next 10 to 20 years. But if the movement and this era of concern for the environment continues on the path that it is, then we'll be looking at more progressive acts for the environment for years to come. More progressive policies being passed to protect and conserve the environment, and then shifting that towards renewable energy. We might even be living on renewable energy sooner than we think, seeing as the demand for it in so many politicians is high. Skepticism and challenge to the reform will come naturally, obviously, like it always does. Skepticism isn't inherently bad, but this issue is very polarizing for a lot of people. You either are fully, in the progressive side, or you just believe that climate change isn't real. These are my sources. These sources were used to get the views, the basic, generalizations for each party. And in that order, so you have the Democratic one, the Republican one, the Libertarians, and then Greens. And then these sources right here were all used to quote each candidate from 2016. So that's it for my term project on environmental politics. I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions or you want to say anything to me, you can say it in the comments section, or I'll just see your reply on Canvas. So thank you for watching. I hope it wasn't too boring. And yeah, bye.